This video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com and GatheringMagic.com, your place to explore the game.
Hi, I'm Michael, and this is my Alesha Who Smiles at Death deck list. So getting into the deck list here a bit, Alesha is a 2-red, 3/2, due to her triggered ability, is a Mardu commander. She is first striking 3/2, and that doesn't sound that impressive, commander. You've got Titans running around, you've got Avengers of Zendikar running around, so why play Alesha? Why would you play a 3/2 as your commander when all they have is first strike? Well, the triggered ability is why. Whenever Alesha Who Smiles at Death attacks, you may pay hybrid black-white, hybrid black-white. If you do, return target creature card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking. That makes it so that all those little dudes you have, all the utility creatures you have, they come back and they get extra value in her deck. Her deck is about value and maximizing the potential of the little dudes. So most people will end up, as a result of that, building Alesha with a bunch of 30 to 45 power 2 or less creatures, shoving them all in there and comboing off through tokens, tokens, sack outlets, combos, and at that point Alesha becomes more of a combo piece than an actual commander herself. That's fine, that's viable. Not how I chose to build Alesha, though. The way I see it is that Alesha is Mardu, and her flavor text encapsulates that perfectly. Greet death with sword in hand. It's perfect for a Mardu flavor text. So the way I decided then to encapsulate that is I built Alesha focusing on equipment and on extra combat steps. Her ability only triggers once per combat, so if you're going to be maximizing the benefit you're getting off of your utility creatures and your little small guys, you're only getting one back per combat step unless you're using, whatever equipment you have to double that. But the way I said is, why not build extra combat steps into the deck so then I can get more creatures back and so I can keep the attacking matters theme going. Alesha wants to get in there. She wants to turn sideways, bring guys back that want to attack, and that's the way I decided to build the deck. So, of course, if you want to read Alesha, we have her here. We also have the altered art I have of Lucina from Fire Emblem and Super Smash Bros. I really felt the Fire Emblem series was well encapsulated by this deck, well encapsulated by the Mardu in general. They're all about attacking and making sure you control the field of combat. So the altered art is done by Ron Ferris at Blackwing Studios. Fantastic guy. If you're looking for altered art, I suggest you give him a shout out. He will do really good work for you. Alright, so Aurelia, the Warleader. Flying, Vigilance, Haste comes out of nowhere. Once she attacks, you get an extra combat step. Absolutely perfect in any Boros deck or any deck in general that wants more combat steps. No reason why you don't want to play Aurelia in this deck. If you have her, yeah, she can't get whipped back with Alesha, but that doesn't really matter so much. Aurelia wins games on her own, and especially if you drop her with a board state in your favor, or if you have something in your graveyard that Alesha can get back, you're probably going to be winning. Aurelia is fantastic in any Combat Matters deck. Next up, we have Feldon on the third path. Or of the third path. So Feldon is a poor man's Kiki Jiki who came out recently. For 2 and a red and you tap him, you put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of target creature in your graveyard, but it's an artifact, it gains haste, sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. So what Feldon wants you to do, or what he allows you to do, is he gives you more options to recur things along with Alesha. He can also be recurred by Alesha himself. He lets you go, let's say that you have 2 creatures in your grave and you really need to get both of them back. Alesha can only get one of those back. Feldon can get back the other one. He also operates a little bit differently in that he keeps creatures in your graveyard, so you don't necessarily have to worry about them getting into combat, making sure they do damage, or on the other opposite end of that, making sure they go back to the grave. Feldon, as long as they're in the grave, he gets value off of them. Feldon also has this neat little thing where, unlike Alesha, whose power 2 or less matters, Feldon doesn't care. No point in there doesn't mention anything about what the power of the creature is. So you have a creature that isn't power 2 or less. It's 3 or more, obviously. You want to get that back? You want to maximize its value? Feldon's your guy. Plays really well and is a very nice complement to Alesha in terms of recurring things and getting maximum value. Jaya Ballard Task Mage. Jaya is in here so that you can make sure that creatures that are in your hand get into the graveyard. You don't have a sacrifice outlet. You're pretty sure your opponent's not going to block and or kill them or is not going to use a board wipe. How do you get them from your hand to the hand to the graveyard if you have to always go through the battlefield? Well, Jay gets around that. All 3 of her abilities involve discarding a card. You can blow up a permanent for a red and tap her, For red and a blue, or red and a colorless, you can deal 3 damage to target creature or player. And for 5 and 2 red, not really as relevant, probably not going to hit that, but if you absolutely needed a board wipe and you have the mana to invest, she deals 6 damage to each creature and each player. So it just gives you options in terms of, one, getting creatures from your hand to the graveyard, and second, making sure that making sure you have some value off of those discards. She's just a really good synergy piece in the deck. So, as we mentioned, 3/2s with first strike. Not exactly anything that's that threatening in Commander. So, how do we protect those? How do we make sure that those creatures just don't die and that Alesha can keep using her ability again and again? That's why we've got the God of Victory here. Yeah, he's a 7/4 indestructible if your devotion to red and white is 7 or more, which is possible in this deck, but his 2 stack abilities are really what you like. First off, creatures you control can be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Alright, that's cool. Make sure that your creatures are more difficult to block. Your opponent has to think a little bit more about how they're going to do it. Sometimes you become unblockable at that point. Most importantly, though, prevent all damage to dealt to attacking creatures you control. Iroas pretty much makes it so you never have to worry about combat again. You become the god of combat thanks to the God of Victory here. So you don't have to worry about attacking into death touch. You don't have to worry about first strike, double strike, how those things will play out. Your creatures aren't being dealt damage by combat. The only thing that's going to remove them are removal spells. So Iroas, really helpful in an Alesha deck. Want to play him. Purphoros, in here for exactly the reason why you would think Purphoros is in here. Yeah, he might be a god if your devotion to red is 5 or more, which is obviously possible. Yeah, he has fire breathing for 2 in a red to all creatures you control. But you want Purphoros because whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, token, non-token, whatever, Purphoros deals 2 damage to each opponent. Shocks each opponent whenever you play a creature. Alesha brings creatures back. You're playing creatures. You have token producers in this deck. You have a lot of ways to trigger his ability, and that damage stacks up really fast. Purphoros, fantastic card. Okay, so we're doing some attacking matters cards here. Obviously, the Titans, we all know what the Titans do. They're all extremely powerful, but they also not only have their abilities trigger when they enter the battlefield, but also when they attack. So more attacking matters cards. Sun Titan, the white one here, is Vigilance, and whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, return a target permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you have a land in there, enchantment, artifact, small creatures. We have all those in this deck. Sun Titan helps you go get them. Another recursion option. Grave Titan, the Black Titan. He has Death Touch, and whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, put 2/2 black zombie creature tokens on the battlefield. So just gives you a little mini army in a can. The Titans can win games on their own. You combine them with Alesha and her abilities, they become even more useful. Just absolutely fantastic in any deck, especially in an Alesha deck or any deck that cares about attacking. Brutal Hordechief. Whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. That can be an ability that really matters in an attacking matters deck. It's essentially extort whenever you attack without any mana. He himself is only a 3/3, so you might want to give him some protection, but the thing is, his ability doesn't require that he attacks. It's whenever any creature you control attacks. So even if it's just Alesha attacking with him out, you're getting a 1 life swing regardless of what happens in combat or how they block or whatever. The other good thing about him is he has an ability here. For 3 hybrid red, white, creatures your opponents control block this turn if able, and you choose how those creatures block. So one thing you need to note, that means that creatures your opponents control must block. It's not an option that they don't block. They absolutely have to block at that point. But it allows you to manipulate where they're blocking, whether or not you're throwing some small guys under your big guys to get rid of them, whether or not you're throwing their biggest guy in front of your little guy so your big guys get through. He just allows you to manipulate combat. Is a really good card in this kind of a deck. Hellrider. The template is essentially for Brutal Hordechief, but he himself has haste, which is a difference. Whenever a creature you control attacks, including himself, Hellrider deals 1 damage to defending player. You don't get the life gain option, but he's another option of just amounting the damage. Just a really good card in an aggressive deck like this. Oops. And the next card, which had slid down here, Ambuscade Shaman. Whenever Ambuscade Shaman or another creature in his battlefield under your control, those creatures get +2/+2 until end of turn. He's essentially a little mini boost. I've already got enough haste outlets in this deck, so what he does is creatures come into my battlefield, they get a small boost, they're attacking. Ambuscade Shaman gives them another option, just synergy in this deck, all about attacking. Karmic Guide. Flying, protection from black, and a very important ability of Echo. Whenever Karmic Guide comes into play, choose target creature card in your graveyard and put that creature in play. So I attack with Alesha, with back Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide goes and gets another creature. I went from 1 creature to 3 creatures really fast. Also, Karmic Guide herself has Echo, which means that during your next upkeep, you can choose to pay her mana cost, or you essentially sacrifice her at this point or any other echo creature you may have. That becomes really helpful because it's a built-in way to get her back in the graveyard so you can just recur her and another creature over and over and over again. Really useful card. Just really good to have in the deck. Next up is Blinding Angel. Blinding Angel is kind of a one or the other kind of option. Essentially, Blinding Angel, whenever she deals combat damage to a player, that player skips her next combat phase. She also has flying herself. The other option for a card in Alesha deck that is very similar to this is Stonehorn Dignitary. He's from M12. He doesn't have flying, and he's just straight whenever he enters the battlefield, target opponent skips his or her next combat. That's an option. That's probably the better option. I personally like Blinding Angel because it keeps with whenever she deals combat damage to a player she wants to be attacking, it makes me work a little bit harder for it. That way I'm just not spamming Stonehorn over and over and they just don't have any way of interacting with me. So it's just a personal choice. It's Commander. The more you can prevent your opponents from attacking you, the better off you are. And I still get to attack. They just don't get to attack. Couple of token producers here. Siege Gang Commander. He is he's 5 power spread out across 4 bodies whenever he enters the battlefield. Put 3 1/1 red goblin creatures tokens on the battlefield. Also for red and white, red and colorless, sacrifice a goblin. Siege Gang Commander deals 2 damage to target creature player. There is going to be a good number of goblin tokens in this deck. He gives me some more, as well as giving me an option of what to do with him if I don't feel like attacking with him. Just, once again, an army in a can. Fun guy to have, gets recurred. Ponyback Brigade. Siege Gang Commander without the sacrifice a goblin option. Puts out 5 power across 4 bodies. Just really good card for Alesha. Mardu, why not? Alright, so now we have Master Cruelties. He's in Japanese because I like foreign language cards. I think they look cooler than our language in general. But Master Cruelties is a first strike death touch demon for 1 with power 1 and toughness 4. His clause is that he can only attack alone whenever you're declaring attackers. However, when he attacks and is unblocked, target opponent's life total becomes 1 instantly. That is very powerful. Bit of a trick here, though. If you have Alesha out and you bring back Master Cruelties from your graveyard, it gets around his he can only be declared as your sole attacker ability because you're not declaring him as an attacker. He comes in automatically as attacker, kind of like a Kalia trigger thing. So what you do at that point then is, because if both of them go unblocked, you decide which of the 2 deals damage first. So essentially you can cheat a bit. Master Cruelties deals combat damage, sets them to 1, Alesha deals damage, they're dead at that point. So Master Cruelties, you don't always want to use him because people get upset at you really fast that they're dying out of nowhere, but he isn't, if you absolutely have to win, bring him back from the grave, great card, ends games. Stoneforge Mystic, go and get equipment, put it onto the battlefield if it's stuck in your hand and just eating and you have enough mana to do it. Recur her with Alesha, go and get more equipment. Like I said, I have a bit of a equipment matters theme in here, and Stoneforge is all about it. Anafenza Kintree Spirit is in here with the card right behind her for a combo that I probably won't always have in this deck, but I want to at least try it out once or twice. Anafenza, whenever another non-token creature is in the battlefield under your control, bolster 1. So Bolster is a decent ability in of itself. It always goes on the creature with the lowest toughness, which is its lone drawback. And I mean, in an Alesha deck, you're playing a bunch of little toughness guys, so +1/+1 counters, why not? However, if you pair Anafenza with Murderous Redcap and a sack outlet, you have an infinite combo. Because Anafenza is always bolstering the creature with the lowest toughness, Murderous Redcap also has an ability called Persist. Whenever he dies, you can choose to bring him back to the battlefield as long as he doesn't have a -1/-1 counter on him, and then he deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. If you have a sacrifice outlet, you sacrifice Murderous Redcap to it. He then comes back with its -1/-1 counter as a 1/1. Anafenza then bolsters him because he has the lowest toughness when he enters the battlefield. He goes back to the 2/2. You sacrifice him to the outlet, comes back once again to 1/1, she bolsters, he goes back to 2/2. You essentially have an infinite combo where you can just keep dealing 1 damage to everybody until everybody's dead. It's kind of janky. I don't think I'll probably keep it in here forever, but I want to try it out a little bit. For those of you who love infinite combos, there's one for you. Works with anything. Murderous Redcap works with anything that puts +1/+1 counters on it. Anafenza is that. That's why some people are tiring her out with this kind of a combo deck in, any kind of combo deck with Persist in Modern. So it's just an option. Gives you something fun to do. And Anafenza is decent enough in this deck because you're going to have a lot of low toughness creatures. Why not give them some boosts? Into a couple of the enter the battlefield abilities for the creatures. Duergar Hedge-Mage, if you control 2 or more mountains, destroy target artifact. Control 2 or more planes, destroy target enchantment. Very good value. So destroy 2 permanents for 1 guy entering the battlefield. Recur him, you have a lot of value off of a guy. Priest of Thune is only destroying a enchantment when he enters the battlefield, but I like to keep him in here because in my play group, there are a lot of enchantments that kill people, so I'd rather have more enchantment destruction in here than pretty much any other form of destruction, because that's what ends games in my group. So I just chose Priest of Thune kind of as a tech for my play group. The guy, a couple options here. The guy that's going to enter the battlefield and destroy a target creature. Bone Shredder himself destroys target non-artifact, non-black creature. He is flying. He also has Echo, so kind of like Karmic Guide. He can put himself back in the grave for recursion, so you can keep destroying something each turn. Pretty good value guy. Mentor of the Meek. These are, now we're getting into a little bit more of the stack abilities that are good with power 2 or less creatures. Mentor of the Meek, whenever another creature enters the battlefield and has power 2 or less, you may pay 1 colorless. If you do, draw a card. In this deck, he becomes essentially a Mind's Eye. You're going to get a lot of value off this guy, be drawing a lot of cards. And in red and white, you need as many card draw options as you can get. Mirror Entity. One of the win conditions in this deck, you're going to be playing a bunch of guys that are going to be low power and toughness. Mirror Entity, for an X ability, so however much mana you want to pump into it, creatures you control become XX base and gain all creature types until end of turn. All your 1/1, 2/2, 3/2s, and they essentially become 5/5, 6/6, and then whatever bonuses you have from your anthems or your counters or your equipment get added onto that. So Mirror Entity comes out, and he can just win a game through combat. Fun guy, good synergy in the deck. Grand Abolisher. Makes it so that my opponents can't interact with me on my turn. No more counter spells, no more instant speed removal. Essentially, he sets up any kind of win condition or combo you want in your deck. Just good guy. Good guy, protects me. Falkenrath Noble. The Blood Artist effect, essentially. Whenever he or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Not a whole lot of life swings, but as many things as going to be dying in any game, because it's not just creatures you control, it's whenever another creature dies, you get to essentially extort somebody. He can also be played a little bit politically, as he gets played often in my group politically. At that point, you don't always have to deal to whoever had a creature die. The way we usually do it is whoever has the most life. Sometimes it's, if your creature died, you lose it. But if somebody's having a lot of life and you need to bring everybody back down, he allows you to be politics, allows you to deal the life loss to them. So, just a fun card, works well in the deck. Corpse Connoisseur. Entomb on a Stick. Whenever he enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card and put it into the graveyard. If you do, shuffle, and he also has Unearth, so you can bring him back and do it again. He's an Entomb, a dual Entomb on a Stick. Once you get him in the graveyard, just sets up plays. For example, you might want to put creatures in the graveyard, such as Anger. As long as you control a mountain and he's in your grave, creature control have haste. If you're playing combat deck, play Anger, get things ability to come in and attack people. Duplicant, because of his imprint ability, essentially becomes Exile on a creature. Whenever he comes in the battlefield, you remove target non-token creature from the game. He then becomes essentially a copy of that. He has that card's power, toughness, and creature types. He's kind of an Exile ability on a stick. Yeah, you could do the combo where you bring in, what is that? Is that Fiend Hunter? Yeah, or Banisher Priest, essentially, whatever those creatures are when they come in the battlefield, exile until they're gone. Duplicate makes sure they're gone forever, and he gets the power boost from them. So he's just a really good card in this kind of a deck. He's 2 power, keep bringing him back, keep exiling things that are going to kill you. Ramp. Ramp is very important in Commander, and especially in red, white, black, you don't have a whole lot of options to it. You're not playing... black does, but red and white, you're not playing green, so how are you going to go get How are you going to go get lands and make sure you're keeping up with other players? Japanese Solemn Simulacrum. Go get a basic land whenever he enters the battlefield, put into play tapped, and when he dies, draw a card. Oops. Burnished Hart. For 3, sacrifice Burnished Hart, search library for up to 2 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped. If you are not playing green in a Commander deck, or even if you are playing green in a Commander deck, Burnished Hart, great ability for mana ramp. He's only 1 slot. He's essentially an Armillary Sphere, but he also comes with a 2/2 body, so you have a bit of blocker if you need that. Becomes a really good option for mana ramp in an Alesha deck. Alright, so now we're going to get into the Planeswalkers here. We only have 2 of them. It's an equipment deck. Why not play Nahiri? Gives me a bit of a, for +2, I can put out a 1/1 core soldier token. Gives me a bit of a token producer. Also, you may, for -2, you may put an equipment card from your graveyard or your hand onto the battlefield. And for -10, you can put out the Stoneforge Blade, so if you ever get to that point and you equip that onto Alesha as your commander, because it gives her +5/+5 and double strike, and that equipment itself is indestructible, you can essentially go win games through commander damage. Nahiri is perfect in any deck that's playing equipment, and this deck does play that. Liliana Vess. Target player discards a card. If you have something in your hand you want to get in the grave, cool, let's go get in the grave. If your opponent has things that you want to try and get them to discard, make them discard. Mostly, though, you're playing her for the -2. She is the one straight tutor we have in this deck for essentially a -2 vampiric tutor. Search your library for a card, then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. You know, if it's not a creature you want in your grave or it's not an equipment, Liliana helps you go get it. Just a good card to have. Make sure you get what you need for combo pieces or just to have whatever you need. Into the equipment here. Whispersilk. Target creature is unblockable and can be the target of spells or abilities, or essentially Shroud. Alesha gives super protection to Alesha. Make sure Alesha gets in there and you don't have to worry about her dying if you don't have one of your combat protections out there. Fantastic card. Gives it unblockable. Not played enough in Commander. Swiftfoot Boots. Hexproof and haste. Give something that isn't your commander haste, or make sure your commander, whatever important creature you have, is protected. It's Swiftfoot. It's a staple. Play it. Darksteel Plate, indestructible itself. Equipped creature is indestructible. One thing that Alesha can get killed even if it's not through combat is board wipes. She's only 3 mana to start off, but then it becomes 5, then 7, gets more and more expensive, and with her ability already costing ability to trigger, you don't want to spend as much mana on recasting her. Darksteel Plate, make sure you don't have to, or make sure other things don't get destroyed. Skull Clamp, you have Goblin tokens. You have Core Spirit Soldier tokens. Why not draw cards off of them? Combos, yay! Skull Clamp, if you're playing tokens, great card to play. Gives you another draw option. What girl doesn't love a good sword? This is a deck all about, well, we only have 3 swords in here, but each of them is really good. Sword of Vengeance. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. Put this on Alesha, she becomes very scary. And she also has the ability then to block after attacking. Which makes it scary for your opponents on attacking on the ground. Swords are always good. Speaking of the swords that are the staples that everybody knows about and are really good, trying not to play that many of them in here, but just a couple that I am playing. Sword of War and Peace, +2/+2, pro white, pro red. Whenever it deals combat damage to player, you deal damage to that player equal to the number of cards in his or her land, and you gain a life for each card in yours. Life gain, gives me protection, deals a little extra damage. Fantastic, swords explain themselves. We'll get to the other sword we have in here in a minute, but next up we have the Mana Rocks, Soul Ring, Chromatic Lantern. Because her ability is hybrid black-white, you want to make sure your lands can produce that whenever you need it. Chromatic Lantern, make sure your lands can produce whatever color you need, and it also gives you a whatever color you need itself. Darksteel Ingot. Artifacts get blown up like everything else gets blown up in Commander. Darksteel Ingot protects itself, it's indestructible, so you will always have the option, barring an exile of just a Mana Rock, which is kind of a waste of a card. It's always going to give you an option to keep producing color, whatever mana you need. Good solid rock in Commander. Dolemn Gate, the template for Iroas in a sense. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking creatures you control. Just protection for your creatures attacking. Very good. Your creatures come back attacking off of Alesha. You want to make sure that they aren't dying. Always good to have. Hammer of Purphoros. Creatures you control have haste, 2 and a red, and tap. You can sacrifice the land if you want a golem creature. Mostly it's in here for giving your creatures haste, but hey, if you also have Purphoros out himself, why not, turn a mountain into a man and also have a bit of a flavor win. All the Vorthoses out there will probably love that, even if it's not the wisest decision. A couple sacrifice outlets in here. Ashnod's Altar, sacrifice a creature, put 2 colorless mana into your mana pool at that point. It's classic. If you need to sacrifice something, it's just a good option to have. Ashnod's Altar is one of the great ones. One of the other ones, Goblin Bombardment. Sacrifice a creature, Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Damage, probably not as relevant, but it's a sacrifice outlet, and you need those in this kind of a deck. Just make sure that you have things in the grave. So Outpost Siege is essentially a choose one or the other card. You could also choose Phyrexian Arena, probably the better option of the two in terms of just straight playability. I liked Outpost Siege for this deck though because it was new, I want to play around with it a bit, and also because it's a Mardu flavored, is the Mardu Siege. Choose Khans or Dragons when it enters the battlefield. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you chose Khans, exile the top card of your library until end of turn, you may play that card, so the red pseudo-draw kind of ability. Probably what you're going to choose most of the time. The other option for Dragons, whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. It's not a bad option. Most of the time you're choosing Khans. Gives you a consistent draw option, which you don't get a whole lot of in red. Aggravated Assault. For 3 and 2 red, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase, followed by an additional main phase. So it's essentially one of the various, gain an extra combat step, but this time it's on an enchantment, so it's repeatable. When you combine it with Sword of Feast and Famine, the other sword in the deck, you essentially can create an infinite combo. Sword of Feast and Famine gives you pro black and pro green, and whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to that player discards a card, and you untap all lands you control. So essentially, if you put this Sword of Feast and Famine on a creature, you deal combat damage to a player, you untap all your lands, pay for aggravated assault, go to the next combat, hit them again, untap all your lands. You essentially create an infinite combo there. That is a really fun combo in an attack step deck that is all about how you attack your opponents. That is flavorful and it works perfectly. Mardu Ascendancy. Mardu Ascendancy, whenever a non-token creature control attacks, put a 1/1 red goblin creature token on the battlefield tapped and attacking. That's the majority of the reason why this card's in the deck. It gives you extra tokens to do whatever you want with. Also, it has this ability to sacrifice Mardu Ascendancy. Creatures in control get +0/+3 until end of turn. Maybe survive a Star Storm, maybe a Blast from Sack. I don't think that's rarely ever going to be relevant, but mostly it's flavorful, gives you goblin tokens to deal whatever with you're going to be attacking, so why not get a benefit off of them? Cathar's Crusade, absolutely fantastic in an Alesha deck. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, token, non-token, doesn't matter, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Also goes infinite if you have any persist creatures like Murderous Redcap. Really good ability, you're going to be playing creatures, why not get benefits off of them? In the Web of War, whenever a creature comes into play under your control, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Put something into play out of nowhere, it's going to be dealing some damage. Another haste option, really good. Into the instants and sorceries in the deck. Buried Alive, search your library for up to 3 creatures, put them into your graveyard. Buried Alive, put whatever you need in the grave that Alesha can revive. Ghastly Conscription, this is one I'm just kind of playing around with. It's kind of just a personal choice. I'm the guy in my play group that plays a lot of the big recursion abilities, hence the recursion deck. I play Rise of the Dark Realms a lot in one of my other decks, and so I just kind of said, hey, this is essentially Rise of the Dark Realms that's much worse but Tarkir flavored. Why not try it? I mean, things are dying a lot in my play group. It's just kind of a fun card. You need those in Commander. Exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard and face down pile, shuffle that pile, then manifest those cards. So it's kind of a, ooh, what could this face down card be? It's kind of just a fun card, nothing really major, but, and it might end up winning you the game. Who knows? It's just fun to play around with. World at War, it's essentially gain an extra combat step and untap all your creatures, but it also has rebound, so you get to play it twice. Fun card, once again, combat steps on a stick. Reforge the Soul, Wheel of Fate, Wheel of Fortune, whichever one, well, not the Wheel of Fortune, but Wheel of Fate, essentially. Each player discards his or her hand, draws 7 cards, miracle cost of 1 in a red. Never been disappointed whenever I play this card in any decks. It's red card draw, puts the things in your hand in the grave if you need them there, gives you a new hand if you need more cards. Fantastic card draw, great in red. Faceless Looting is kind of the selective card draw for red. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. It flashbacks for 2 in a red. Gives you more looting options to put what you need in the graveyard for Alesha. Draw cards when you need it. Just some filtering. Good to have. Cataclysm. The best, in my opinion, board wipe you can have in an Alesha deck. For 2 and double white, each player chooses from the permanents he or she controls an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, and sacrifices the rest. So it gets around indestructibility, it gets around, whatever protection that individual player may have. If you play this while you have Alesha out, doesn't matter, as long as you have that land, you can have equipment, artifacts for whatever enchantments, doesn't matter. If you have 1 land in hand and you play this card, you automatically are pretty much going to be able to have 2 creatures while everybody else is stuck on 1. It's a great card to play with Alesha, puts you so far ahead, great board wipe. My personal favorite board wipe, Divine Reckoning, because it's a bit of a political card. Each player chooses creatures he or she controls and destroy the rest. Also flashbacks for 5 and 2 white, so you get to use them multiple times. Divine Reckoning, it's a fun card in Commander because everybody gets to keep 1 creature. So you're mostly hitting the token strategies, the swarm strategies, and you're going to keep your best creature. True, they're going to get to keep their best creature, but if you're playing from behind, you're probably going to make more friends this way than you're going to make enemies. It gets everybody back in the game, kind of resets the playing field. Most of the time, if I have Alesha out, the way that my deck plays, I'm going to be so far ahead already at that point. I just go get back with Alesha, whatever I just put in the grave. It's a fun board wipe. You get 2 board wipes on a stick. In Commander, the flashback is great value. I love it. Into some of the quick instants here. Return to Dust. Remove target artifact enchantment from the game. If you played it during your main phase, you may do it again. My play group, like I said earlier, a lot of enchantments, a lot of artifacts. Need to make sure I get rid of them. An instant speed, perfect to have. Just always want to make sure you have that removal when you need it. Now, I also built this deck with a bit of probably more instance that you're going to see in a lot of Alesha decks, mostly because I like to mess with people during combat, and red-white is perfect for that. Reflect damage. Redirect all damage dealt by any one source to that source's controller. They play Blasphemous Act. They're dead. They're playing Balefire Dragon. They're dead. They play anything that deals like a mass Starstorm, massive amounts of damage to everything. It's probably going to really backfire and probably kill them. One of my friend plays Balefire and Blasphemous Act in the same deck, so when he sees this card, he usually gets very salty and is pretty much dead as the screen. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, no, there we go. Pretty much this is just a come out of nowhere and kill you. You're going to try and kill me? Nope, you're dead kind of card. It's just fun, surprises people. Nice to have. Crackling Doom, similar vein. You attack me with your biggest creatures, well, that's unfortunate for you. Crackling Doom deals 2 damage to each opponent. Each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures he or she controls. Great card. One of Mardu's new signature cards from Concept Arc here. Absolutely great. Perfect in Commander. Get rid of their biggest threat. Deal a little damage, which isn't as relevant, but it hits everybody that isn't you. Great card. Deflecting Palm. Next time a source of your choice will deal damage to this turn, prevent that damage. If it's prevented, deals that much damage to that source's controller. You're attacking me with your big 30-30. Now you've taken 30-30. That's unfortunate. For one red, one white. Really effective for low cost. Comeuppance. One of the new cards from Commander 2014 that I've really had some fun with. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and Planeswalkers you control this turn by sources you don't control. Planeswalkers, big difference between it and some of these other cards in here. If damage from a creature source is prevented this way, Comeuppance deals damage to that creature, deals that much damage to that creature. If damage from a non-creature source is prevented this way, Comeuppance deals that much damage to the source's controller. Essentially, it becomes a board wipe return. It's like you're attacking with a bunch of creatures. Well, they're all dealing damage to themselves equal to how much damage you dealt to me. It turns the game really big in your favor. Really fun card to surprise people with. And, of course, we have the lands to finish things off. We, of course, have the 3-color lands with Nomad Outpost, Command Tower, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. Make sure that all of the lands I have can produce black for Alesha's ability. High Market, the other sacrifice ally we have in this deck, normally produces 1 mana or 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, but sacrifice a creature and tap it, you gain 1 life. You know, make sure something goes to the grave instead of getting exiled. Get something in the grave you need there. Just a really useful card in here. Another card that I don't have that is similar effect that's also really good for this deck, Phyrexian Tower, which is sacrifice a creature, tap it, and you can add 2 black mana to your mana pool. So another option in this deck that's in the same vein as High Market, but I don't have it, so Vaults of the Archangel. 1 colorless mana or for 2 black and white. Creatures control gain death touch and lifelink until end turn. Swings the game in your favor, can either kill people or put you right back in the game ender in certain circumstances. Homeward Path. Colorless mana or each player gains control of all creatures he or she owns. This is red, white, black. Blue players may steal my things. Blue players may steal my Alesha and try and, prevent me from winning the games. Especially my friend that plays Yasova Dragonclaw. Well, sorry Yasova, but back under my control. Opal Palace, in case Alesha keeps going back to command zone, pay 1 more when she enters the battlefield and give her a +1/+1 counter. Bloodstained Mire, we have a couple searches here. Bloodstained Mire, go get a mountain or a swamp. Evolving Wilds, go get a basic land. The Ravnica tap lands, Sacred Foundry, Blood Crypt, Godless Shrine. The Innistrad /M12, M13 lands, Clifftop Retreat, Dragon Skull Summit, and Isolated Chapel. The Scry lands from Theros, which I am a huge fan of in Commander, because scrying might not seem that impressive and they're coming in tapped, but scrying, man, it can sometimes make sure you get exactly what you need or prevent you from getting things that would just dead draw you. In a deck where you don't have a whole lot of drawing options at certain points, scrying can become all the more important. So Temple of Triumph, Temple of Malice, and Temple of Silence. Then we have the Karoo lands from Ravnica in the forms of Boros Garrison, Orzhov Basilica, and Rakdos Carnarium. To finish things off, we have, if I can get him here, 5 mountains, 5 plains, and 5 swamp. I usually run a few more basic lands just because in our playgroup, and especially in this deck where a couple cards are depending on how many plains and swamps and mountains you have, just nice to have. So that is the deck list. Thank you for watching CMDR Decks. Please subscribe and favorite.